Welcome to the Economic Development and Tourism Committee meeting for March 7th. Before we get started, I'd like to ask Chairman Hickman if he'd open us up in a word of prayer. What number is that? 7? Thanks.
Thank you. Let us pray. Lord God, you started us early this morning, Lord, and you've been with us all day long, and we thank you for that. Lord, we just ask you to provide us with wisdom, courage, and moderation, Lord, as we do great things for the great people of Georgia. In your son's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we get started, I want to thank staff. We had a committee sub that's we're going to hear HB 1410. I want to thank Paige and the whole staff for getting this together. We also have a guest. We have Paige's father, Mr. McKenna, here from Florida. He came down from Florida to see how this great state of Georgia works. So welcome to Paige's father, Mr. McKenna. Glad to have you. Okay, we've got two bills that we want to hear. We got the first one is HB 1041, Representative Stevens. If you could come up and give us the LC number and tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, HB 1041 is, this bill's for the Savannah Convention Center. It's sponsored by all 6 of our House members. It passed the House 161-1. The Savannah Convention Center opened 24 years ago, and since then it's generated millions of dollars, if you will, in economic activity for local lodging taxes. The building was so successful in the legislature and the governor, we funded $276 million to expand it. That is to double its size. The convention center is a state-owned building. It is on state-owned property, the land. It's governed by a state authority, and it's managed by a state authority, the World Congress Center. So House Bill 1041 does 2 things, and only 2 things. And they're both going to be found on page 5, lines 109 through 119. Number 1, it raises the bonding capacity from the convention center from $50 million to $400 million. It is exactly the same as what the World Congress Center, whenever they added their hotel, and that's the purpose of this bonding, by the way. Many of you have seen this 975-room Cigna Hotel that was built next to the World Congress Center, and of course they sold bonds to private investors to help finance the this hotel, and this is exactly what the convention center is wanting to do. Number 2, the legislation also establishes condemnation powers for the Savannah Convention Center. It's important to note that it only applies to public property, not private property. Other authorities, like the World Congress Center, Stone Mountain Authority, and others, have this same condemnation authority. Mr. Chairman, that's it in a nutshell. It's an opportunity for us to, for me anyway, I'd kind of like to see these folks pay their own way, and the ability for them to bond and build a hotel should keep them from coming back to us asking for money on a continual basis.
Okay. How's the convention business in Savannah? Is it picking up?
Yes, sir. It's busting open. There's almost nowhere to get a room, and when you do, it's expensive, supply and demand.
Well, good. All right. Any questions? Number 14? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Representative Stevens, for bringing this bill. Just to make sure, condemnation of public property. So you can condemn. So the authority could condemn property owned by the city of Savannah, the Chatham County, but not me.
No, sir.
Okay.
Only public property. We're having issues back and forth, if you will, and you might know if you've gone to Savannah, we've had a major cave-in on the areas on in front of the trade center. And it's really difficult, if you will, and expensive, by the way, whenever this happens. And the property that's alongside of one of the slips is owned by the county. Understand, the state of Georgia bought this property. We conveyed it to the county, so we're having an issue in trying to get this property back so that the trade center itself can be responsible for repairing this instead of it being on the taxpayers. That's a very good question.
Number 6, is that you, Senator Mallow?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With a representative with the dock slippage that you're talking about, that's where the ferries come, and that's at the front of the convention center.
Correct.
And so we've invested how much money in the convention center?
It's double. You got the total number?
So the most recent investment was $276 million for the expansion. In the 22 years or thereabouts prior to that, government investment totaled about $250 million. So it's a $500 million facility when it opens with this as an enlarged facility at the first quarter of next year.
And to follow up on that, every single city that collects a hotel motel tax is participating to make sure that there's zero debt.
So you got $500 million and your front porch falls in. You want the ability to condemn it and fix it if you don't own it. Is that not your understanding of that?
That is exactly right. That's a very good way to put it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the appropriate time,
All right, let me see. I don't think anybody does anybody else have any questions before I open it up to the public? Okay.
And I apologize, Representative, thank you for bringing this. I haven't read it. I just finished reading. It is just for county properties or state properties, right?
Or city.
Or city, well, yeah,
Yes.
but government, I guess what I'm saying.
I'm still
Correct.
going to open
Yeah,
it up.
no personal. Thank
No
you.
personal dollar.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm going to, we don't have anybody on the sign-up sheet, but I will open it up to public comment. If anybody would like to come speak for or against, do we have anybody that would like to speak on behalf of this House Bill 1041? Okay. With that, I'll, Senator Mallow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move do pass.
Seconded by a couple people, but we'll go with Donzella. We'll go with Senator Watson seconded it. He's from Savannah. So we got Senator Mallow has a motion, seconded by Senator Watson. Any more discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. It is unanimous. And I want to thank you for bringing this bill. I am a big believer in the tourism business and the convention business, and that what that hotel is doing at World Congress Center is going to be a catalyst and have a halo effect and really help that area grow. I know the Lieutenant Governor met with I believe your executive director, Mr. Smith, today, and he was very impressed with what y'all are doing down there, and so he's been a big supporter too, Lieutenant Governor Jones. So I want you to know that.
Appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, and for especially the unanimous vote. This is going to make us all proud. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Who's going to be carrying this for you in the Senate?
Senator Watson.
Senator Watson. Okay. Well,
Thank you.
we'll get it done.
Thank you, sir.
I would tell you need to go to Senator Brass and tell him you want to have it on the rules calendar. Okay. Thank you. All right. We've got the majority leader, the esteemed majority leader. Come on up. And we just got this committee sub, so if you're okay, I'd like to hold off on the vote until Tuesday, if that's okay with
Yes,
you,
sir.
Mr. Leader.
Absolutely, of
And I want you to really explain what this does and the changes that you've made to it. It's HB 1410. Is this the LC LC 500824S?
Yes, sir.
Is that your new LC?
That's right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's an honor to be before you today. Bring before you House Bill 1410, this committee substitute. To give a little bit of background here, a few years ago when I was serving in a different capacity, we had an ad hoc study committee in the off season to look at the issue of homelessness. Took a lot of information from folks who are very involved in this, and it was a very helpful opportunity for myself, and Representative Mary Margaret Oliver at the time was participating in this with me to hear about this issue and look at potential solutions to address unsheltered homelessness in our state. I have a background working in accountability court. So I worked as a prosecutor in a drug court in Gwinnett County, my home circuit, and I saw the success that came from a very structured accountability court program that enabled participants to be on a path to long-term success, sobriety, employment, stable housing, care for their children. And my idea was to bring those types of principles to a program that would allow for voluntary participation. So it would not involve criminal charges, would not involve compulsory participation. It would just be open and available. If someone is homeless, they could enter into a program like this administered by a local charity, or local nonprofit organization, or even housing authority or local government, that there could be some state funding that would be available to help support this program, that there would be the opportunity for private funding, because our corporate partners are very interested in addressing the issue of homelessness and are looking for a means to do so. So House Bill 1410 is really the culmination of those efforts over the years. I think it's important to note that the funds that would be available to these local programs would be subject to appropriation, so we would ultimately decide what's appropriate in the budget. It also would not impact federal funds that are already being received. And what I mean by that is the State Housing Trust Fund currently is the receiver of federal funds, as I understand it, from the federal government, which is restricted for use under Housing First. And Housing First has very strict parameters, which, as I understand it, includes an inability to test for sobriety. And so my concept here is that we could do this the Georgia way. We could allow participants in this voluntary program to commit to engage in sobriety, job training, education programs, to attend therapeutic treatment, substance abuse programs, counseling, that there must be an accounting to address their children to make sure that they're nourished, taken care of, that also there would be the potential for private corporate partners to contribute into this separate part of the State Housing Trust Fund that, as administered, would allow these local programs to offer these parameters to unsheltered homeless, providing stable, immediate housing. And finally, I should mention that these programs would be restricted with an 18-month cap, so it would not be indefinite. It would be, the idea would be to have participants self-sufficient within 18 months, so that they could then have stable housing, have stable employment, and go on and live productive lives. I will just mention that we've put a lot of thought into the eligibility requirements for participants. I received some feedback from the House after it was passed that there was concern about. Originally we had on line 40 of the substitute, it was 14 days, 30 and 44. And we've extended that to 30 days to allow a greater amount of time if somebody expects that they're going to be displaced from their current housing, to allow them to become eligible at that point. That this program would only be available to U.S. citizens, and the reason for that is we want to make sure that the participants are able to get employment, that they're legal to work, and that also the participants would have to sign an affidavit or otherwise prove that they have been residents of Georgia for 12 months, because we don't want other states to start sending homeless populations to Georgia for this to be utilized. So I feel that we've put in very reasonable parameters. We acknowledge that if you're homeless, you may not have documentation initially, so we wanted a sworn statement to reflect the residency criteria so that could be met. And then the final change from the House was that Section 2 actually came from legislation last year for an accounting of how funds are being spent. We have really narrowed this down to just the State Housing Trust Fund with a focus on this new program, so that there can be accountability of how these funds are being spent and the effectiveness of this program. I'll just close by saying this, Mr. Chairman. This is not a one-size-fits-all solution to address a very serious problem. Okay, there are, in the subcommittee we had, it was estimated that 20%, which is actually lower than what I would expect, but 20% of the homeless are currently suffering from mental health issues, which would prevent them from being able to engage in a program like this potentially. And that population needs solutions as well. I'm not discounting that. But what I'm saying is, if I was on the street tonight and I needed a place to have safe, stable housing. I needed a means by which to be on a path to have stable employment going forward. I was committed to working on my sobriety. You know, in the drug court, it's acknowledged that people are going to relapse. There's just a plan in place to address that and to really account for whether they are taking seriously their need to abstain from drugs and alcohol, which is an obstacle to their success. And so if you're willing to voluntarily be involved in this type of framework, that there'd be a means to facilitate that so that people could be self-sufficient. I think this is a very exciting proposal that would allow Georgia to really have a proactive option for our unsheltered homeless population, to not only address the immediate needs that they have, but to put them on a path for long-term success. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer
All
any
right,
questions.
you're going to have some questions, but I wanted to ask you a question first. This morning, we had our subcommittee on appropriations for economic development, and I believe you put $1 million in there.
Yes, sir. There's $1 million in the 25 FY
So
budget.
is that going to be a reoccurring million every year, you think? I mean, is this going to be something that's going to need to be funded for a while, you think?
So what I would say is I think we're trying to gauge the success of a program like this, both as far as interest from potential participants. Is the homeless population going to be interested in engaging in this? And then are there going to be a sufficient number of providers willing to provide this structure? My expectation is this is going to ultimately be a cost savings to the state, because rather than putting up funds which in my view, this continues to be an issue year after year, despite sizable appropriations from the General Assembly and spending and money from the federal government. It continues to be an issue. And if we can actually get folks self-sufficient going forward, that will be a long-term savings. To answer your question, I don't know at this point. I would expect that there would be additional appropriations in the future if this is a successful
If
endeavor.
it's successful,
Yes,
I
sir.
would think we'd want to continue to fund it. I would tell you that, you know, I used to get off on Cortlandt Street, and there was tents in every, you know, and they're gone. I don't know where they went. I think the mayor of Atlanta, I guess they opened up this, they're doing some kind of homeless with shipping containers and building houses and building homes for these folks. But it's a problem, and I really appreciate you bringing this.
Thank you,
And
Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
we got it's lighting up, so we got some questions. Who's number one? Is that you, Senator James?
No.
Okay. Number 4.
Number 4.
Okay. Yeah.
In this legislation, I just want to make sure of something over on page 7.
Yes, sir.
At the top of page 7, where it states that the commission may accept federal funds granted by Congress or executive order for the residential housing project. And I noticed that "and" was stricken out and replaced with "or." I'm assuming that the program would still be able to accept both funds from the federal government as well as the accountability programs. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. So I actually had a meeting on this just before this committee meeting today, and the intent I want to be very explicit about is to not restrict any existing fund utilization that's happening right now. This would be a separate endeavor as part of would be a separate part of the State Housing Trust Fund for this purpose. And because it's a hearing only today, I'm planning to continue to work on that to make sure the language reflects that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Senator Mallow?
To my good friend, the Majority Leader.
Yes, sir, Senator.
2 things. One, I want to make sure to echo my colleague, the senator from Henry County, when we talk about these supportive nonprofits that may go after HUD funding, that there may be housing provided by a housing authority in local community, would they be able to draw down and supplement with this funding for example, we have tiny homes in Savannah, but the government nonprofit agency couldn't afford to put the roof truss on, so they've got a capital campaign to finish the tiny homes because they couldn't afford the roof truss. But they've competed for some funding from HUD, which is drawn down through the housing authority to supplement a portion of that. The city's using some funding, so I want to make sure this could be like a tertiary leg of funding for those agencies where they do do have some of these shortfalls.
My expectation, I know there are experts who can speak on this maybe more specifically than me, but there may need to be some sort of legal separation as to how the funds are used, and it's for this purpose. As I understand Housing First, there is the inability to require drug testing. There's the inability to put certain conditions in place. And again, the intent is not to interrupt any federal funding that we're receiving in this regard, but we do believe that this could be a Georgia solution to allow for ultimate success of the participants. And so that specific legal framework, I think, will be worked out by these providers if this passes.
My second question was, in Chatham County, our Superior Court judges are enacting a community court that would address many of our homeless citizens, and they will bring the court from the courthouse to a community where we have a large number of homeless folks there to do an accountability court, to also ask for compliance with drug and alcohol testing, to receive a suspended sentence should they get off the streets and do these things, and the judge will work with them to, waive the go to jail sentencing requirement. And I may have to just connect with you to get you what they're rolling out in their model, because we do have the people that they just send to Savannah on a bus that are homeless. So I want to make sure that the two can work together.
So I certainly believe that is possible. I will just say this. I've been approached by folks who have told me about homeless accountability courts and the structure there. What I'm proposing here would allow for that without the criminal charges on the front end that would mandate compliance. This would be the voluntariness is what's unique, but should not impact any of the good work that you just described.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Yes, sir.
Senator McLaurin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leader, good to see you, and I'll join the sort of easy and obvious chorus of thanks to you for, signature bipartisan legislation that reflects a lot of leadership, because I think, the politics of homelessness and particularly criminal offenses that would surround homelessness, if there were less care and attention paid, are often impenetrable. And so it's a great service you're doing. My only question really is on the sort of Georgia way aspect of it with drug and alcohol testing. Who makes the decision about good faith? Is that just an agency by agency decision, or does the state have the power to sort of look and peep in and say, we don't think you're really assessing this, or how do you envision that working?
What I think will happen is there will be a stated policy that's provided on the front end, similar to the accountability courts, with a planned sanction as well if there are relapse circumstances, so the participants and the administrators know what that is, and the state overseeing the funds ensures that it's in keeping with the policy objective that we have here. Tried to walk the tightrope of not being too restrictive as we do this, but at the same time, I think as a policymaking body can make a statement that we believe that sobriety from drugs and alcohol will allow these participants to be on a course to self-sufficiency, which is the objective. And Senator, if I may, just in comment as well, I think the General Assembly should be commended for the commitment to addressing homelessness that we've exemplified in our budget, which has had sizable appropriations already. This is just a different way with some additional money here proposed in the budget to go at the issue.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think particularly since it's voluntary, that changes the face of this too, and allows the state to have a little more of a free hand in deciding what the policy guidelines and objectives are. So
Yes,
I think it makes sense to me, and I appreciate you bringing the bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Senator Anderson? You wave? Is that you, Senator Summers?
Thank you, Mr. Leader, for bringing this. I want you all to know, and Mr. Chairman, I want you to know, thank you, Mr. Chairman, that when we worked on Senate Bill 62, the leader was very strong in helping us get the homeless bill across, that we just got across, which really, I think, is showing progress. And this was some things that we had discussed that you wanted to include in that bill, which was a little bit overwhelmed at that time to get there. This is good stuff. Thank you for bringing this. I fully support your bill.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Leader. I agree with you and my colleague down on the other side of the aisle. This is an excellent bill, by the way, and thank you.
Thank you.
Just one question I have, and I meant to answer this question previously, but on the same page 7, down in 8-3-310, it talks about the commission and its authority to disperse funds, and I notice have a may in there instead of a shall. I would hope there wouldn't be any disagreements with funds and the commission not wanting to disperse those funds for some reason. if you think shall may be stronger than may, then I would certainly offer that up to you. And further down in that same paragraph, on line 151, it says the commission may result as appropriate with persons with varied and diverse. I think you would want the commission to definitely consult to make that language with those diverse interests as well. And I would offer that up if you think it would strengthen the language.
Senator, I appreciate that, and since it's a hearing only today, I commit to study those two proposed amendments and to report back to you when I'm back in this committee. Thank you.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Senator Mallow.
You may not be able to see, Mr. Chairman, but I would like to recognize Commissioner Nunn, my good friend sitting to the right. Commissioner for the Department of Community Affairs is here with us today, and he's been a great friend in Savannah as we work to address workforce housing and homelessness and many other things. And so it's a pretty awesome day that the commissioner is here and are here today, and many may not know who he is, but wave your hand, Commissioner, so these folks will see you. That's great.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Leader, we're going to have another meeting on Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock is our next meeting, and we're going to get this, and if you want to make any changes or any amendments or whatever you want to do, I like the bill, and I almost want to give you a vote now, but since we just did get this committee sub
Yes, sir.
an hour before, I would like to wait till Tuesday and then give you a vote on Tuesday, if that's okay.
That's actually my preference as well, so I
Okay.
can work on the great questions that we're asking. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for
All
the
right.
opportunity.
Well, we'll see you Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Any other questions, any other business? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you.